Hey, it's Jennifer Kite-Powell from Tiny Little Victories. I have been wanting to make this episode for quite some time now and had to work up the courage to ask these two guests to come on the show. I have followed them for a long time on LinkedIn and have always been like, yes, go, yes, I love what you're saying. And it took me a little while to get the courage to ask them to come on the show. And when I did ask them, they were like, yes, of course. So I think this says a lot about who they are as people, because basically they didn't know me and they both agreed to be on the show. So I wanted to do a little send up for both of them, which is a little bit different than how we start the show, but I'm very, very excited about both of these guests. My first guest is Rosemary Wilson, who talks about communication, imposter syndrome, diversity and inclusion, emotional intelligence, and leadership development. And she works with women who have looked for external validation as a measure of their worth and experience. And she's written a book about the imposter syndrome, and I'm going to put those links in the end. But she is such a positive person. When you talk to her, you just feel like you could do absolutely anything. The second guest is Jennifer Opal, and Jennifer is a multi-award-winning DevOps engineer. She's the founder of the company called Data But Make It Human. She's a technologist, she's a writer, she's a keynote speaker, and a neurodiversity and inclusion advocate. And she's going to talk about that a little bit more. And both of these women have been so authentic about who they are in the world. And Jennifer has been extremely open about things that she has faced and sort of the audacity of people to, judge her by her openness. And I think that you all are going to really love this episode because there's nothing but a candid conversation here about authenticity, about diversity, about inclusion of every person out there, whatever your gender is, whatever you want to say your gender is if you're ADHD or you have dyslexia or you have autism. We're really going to talk about these things and how they are part of who you are and how you have to stand up for those things. So stay tuned for this next episode with Rosemary Wilson and Jennifer Opal on Tiny Little Victories. Yeah, we're whispering here, but welcome back to Tiny Little Victories. I am your host, Jennifer Kite-Powell, and I have two incredible, amazing, magical guests on the phone with me from London, England. I have Rosemary Wilson and Jennifer Opal. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Now, you guys are going to have to sit there and take the brags because I'm about to do a major, massive introduction on both of you. And first of all, I don't think that there's enough words or time in this podcast to give the send up to both of these women that we're talking to today. So first of all, I want to introduce Rosemary Wilson, and she is the founder of Pragmatica Coaching, and her first book just came out last year in 2022 called Imposter Syndrome and Your Performance, What's the Link? And then Jennifer Opal, who has a company called Data But Make It Human. Not only that, but Jennifer is a award-winning DevOps engineer. She is a technologist, a writer, a keynote speaker, a neurodiversity and inclusion advocate. When somebody reads back all of your accomplishments, how do you feel?
I just beamed.
Sounds good. It beams. I love that.
I
love
smiles.
that too.
It's because when someone else reads it just sounds different.
Because it does feel good, right? I love how you both said the same thing. You beam when someone else reads it from their point of view, who's like in awe of it all. Like in one point, your Pragmatica Coaching, you have the best thing on your website. It says, get the headspace you need to tame your busy mind and embrace that you're good enough, And when I read that, I'm like, yeah, I am good enough. But sometimes to hear it from somebody else is what propels you forward to like have that beaming or feel really good about something.
Yeah. Believing yourself is the hardest thing to do. It really is. Even if you've done it, you've got the accolades, you've got the achievements, you've got the list, you've got the resume, the CV, whatever you want to call it. And
even if you look at like Jennifer's like list of winning and recognitions, like the winner of the Tech Women 100 Awards, the Rising Star Award, like all the most influential women in tech in 2019, 2020, 2021, like the list just goes on. And So for you, Jennifer, you have all these accolades. Is it ever a problem for you to list them all? Do you like cut them down a little? It's a very British thing not to brag. I think most of my run-ins with like my own personality was when I lived in London, where I got a lot of that too blunt, don't brag. I'm not bragging. This is just the truth. So I think culturally, and I think as a woman, I think a lot of times we're really taught not to, you think it's a brag when it's basically just listing out your accomplishments.
The truth.
The truth.
Exactly.
I love that. The truth.
Exactly.
And so like here we are as women, here we are in the working world. Both of you both advocates for diversity, neurodiversity, for inclusion and equity. And so maybe we could just start a little bit with sort of the elephant in the room, because both of you guys were in a Forbes piece that I did on how can tech help increase diversity. And something that Rosemary has often talked about was about the way we recruit, how it doesn't take into any people from marginalized or less privileged backgrounds. I know you have a lot to say about that. Do you want to sort of jump into that with us?
Yeah, I've got so many different angles with this. Please rein me in if I go off.
No, I'll let you go off, and the Jennifer can jump in, and we'll just be all over the place.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we recruit these days is very traditional. It's all about, which university did you go to, or what school did you go to, what was your background, or, what have you done before, what other roles have you done in this space. And for those people who are perhaps from a marginalized or less advantageous background, we're not necessarily looking at those types of roles, or we're looking at them and we're self-selecting, saying, oh, I'm not going to fit in. You go to the website and there's a sea full of sorry, not going to feel be too rude about other people, but a sea of white faces, a sea of white men.
Absolutely. A sea of white men and a sea of white faces, and
blonde hair, it's and people just get turned down. They turn themselves down, not even turned off. They turn themselves down. They self-select out. I'm not even going to try that. I don't think I'm going to fit in. So that's just one way. I mean, but I know we can do more about the recruiting piece.
Just self-select out, meaning because you don't see that face that looks like you or sounds like you, or it represents who you are, because those faces normally just really aren't at the table.
Yeah, they're not there. They're not at the table. They're not on the website. They're not in the representation, the magazines, the brochures, the social media. And also, we're probably already doubting ourselves anyway, because we didn't have the background, we didn't have the money, we didn't have the funds, so it just takes that little nudge of not seeing someone that looks like you to help you to turn yourself down. That's
and then my worry, my concern, and this, maybe Jennifer, you can jump in on this, is like how do we actually make that change? Because I feel like it's harder and harder. I'm not sure. I think tech can do it, though. It's just so funny because I write about tech. And so listening to both of y'all's opinions about, how far tech can actually, how much of the heavy lifting tech can do. But for me, it comes back to people, changing people, which, behavior is the hardest thing to change.
Yeah, I think I agree. That's exactly what I was going to say, Rosemary, the culture. I was just going to say that because it plays such a huge part in not just bringing diversity, but also maintaining the talent in an industry that is so ever growing. And I believe like the last statistic that I read about talked about how 1 in 3 women are considering leaving the tech industry. And then they have to think about, so what is it about that? Like, where did that happen? How does that happen? And I think that was when the Tech Talent Charter actually came out with that report. And not only is one in 3 women planning on leaving their tech job, but there's also 1 in 4 women who've left their tech job in the last few years for a non-tech role.
Let's take a deep dive into those numbers that Jennifer Opal was mentioned, where 1 in 4 women are considering leaving tech for non-tech roles. There was a Deloitte Women in Work Global Survey in 2022 among women about satisfaction in the work-life balance, which had actually dropped 32% from 70% before the pandemic. And in every category, women quoted productivity, mental well-being, as their primary reasons for that. Half of the women in tech dropped out mid-career, and women comprise less than 1/4 of senior roles. And here's the big number: women leave their tech jobs at a rate of 45% higher than men do. So how do we have a reset to reset the tech culture towards inclusion? And, women of color, 47% were more likely to report that it was more difficult to connect with mentors and sponsors in a remote setting during the pandemic than white women. And both men and women of color reported less frequent and valuable interactions than their white peers. And women of color, about 41%, are more likely to report a negative impact on work-life balance than white women. And this is from a BCG research report in 2022. And resetting the tech culture towards inclusion is a really difficult thing. Tech firms are still judged as bro cultures by many women, and it's widespread cultural reset that's actually needed to get women back into tech and feeling like they fully belong. So we're going to continue on with Rosemarie and Jennifer, where we're going to talk about like how we make that happen and how can we increase the number of women in tech and minority women in tech. Stay tuned.
So the maintenance of actually keeping women in the tech industry and keeping people of color and keeping marginalized groups in the tech industry all goes down to the culture. I feel like from my personal experience of working in quite a few organizations and even as an employee myself, the key difference that I've seen in what helps keep diverse talent when they spend so much money trying to bring them in is ensuring that the culture aligns with the work that they're putting in to bring that talent in. When someone comes in and they're seeing that, okay, I'm not really getting mentorship, I'm not really getting the opportunities to go up the ladder, or I'm not getting access to accommodations. I think it's important that we really think about the culture, because for me in my tech career, the biggest difference in how long I've stayed in an organization and for many Black women around me in the tech industry has been the culture of that organization, and most of them tend to leave within a year.
How do we incrementally change this? And I can't see the solution. I mean, I know you guys probably have a lot to say, but what do you think? I mean, how do you change culture?
First of all, someone's got to be the first one to speak up. And that's the thing. Most people are afraid to speak up. They don't want to be seen as a troublemaker. They don't want to be the one. And we're not really helping people to have those skills in being able to feel safe and to speak up in an organization where the culture is just off. So someone's got to be the first, and usually, usually it should come from those above, those higher up. And you can ask questions in your organization. You can do it anonymously. You can find out how people are really feeling in your organization if you are serious about getting people in the door, helping them through the career pipeline in your organization and staying there, keeping your talent in-house. So, but someone needs to be the first one to speak up. Someone needs to be, let's call it quote unquote, the bad guy. Not really, but the honest person, the honest bad guy or bad girl. But, or whatever, you've got to be the first person. But I've seen so many in so many spaces where people are being mistreated because of their diversity, and they just leave. They just leave, and nothing changes in the organization.
Because fear, you don't want to be called out. You already are having doubts about yourself. So Jennifer and I were talking about this earlier. You could be neurodiverse as well, right? And you've been criticized a lot about, sort of people think you're giving you a compliment about how you think or how you process, when actually they're trying to define you, just to understand who you are so they can classify you and then either exclude you or not. I feel like there's layer after layer that's been happening, and I'm really glad that people are more open about it. But as somebody that, was diagnosed with ADHD very young in my life, and we were talking about the differences, I can tell how people react to you. And Jennifer, you have a very interesting story about that, about phrases you were hearing over and over again before you had put it together.
Yeah, so I wasn't diagnosed. So I was diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia in 2018. And then I was diagnosed with as an autistic earlier this year. So a few years apart, and I'm still trying to understand how that was missed the first time, but unfortunately,
I'm not laughing at you, but I'm like, come on, guys, like you know, that's
how did that happen? And honestly, I wish I could go back and find the psychologist, but he's retired since, so I can't chase him and ask him what happened. But when I was growing up, I was always described as someone that was very like smart, very creative, and also very self-aware. Like those is something that was just always said to me. Like, you're very self-aware. You're very self-aware for a young girl. You're very self-aware, and I'm like, why am I always hearing that? I didn't understand that. And when I spoke to quite a few, I'm grateful that over the years of being in advocacy, I've managed to create such an amazing community of neurodivergent people. And it's also a really common thing that they heard growing up too, or even as an adult, like, oh, you're so self-aware. So a lot of the women, neurodivergent women that I met, it was just a very common comment that they said that they were always getting that. And then I would think to myself, but what does that mean exactly? And I realized that it's not necessarily that I'm self-aware from their perspective, maybe, but I think I'm someone that's able to kind of see the perspective of things. Maybe it's like see the pattern recognition, see both sides of arguments, be able to assess someone's emotions, things like that. And sometimes just the little things. And I think that from that, and also being able to just assess myself, I was always just described as someone quite self-aware.
Which is very positive.
Yeah, it's positive. But I think that as I got older and I started going to therapy and realizing that I actually wasn't as self-aware as they were saying, I realized that, like, although I was self-aware from a emotionally disconnected type of way, in a sense where I was able to kind of observe myself and others from the outside looking in, but not necessarily from the inside out. So I think that's something that I tended to struggle with when it came to emotional understanding.
Okay. Protective nature. Is that a protective nature?
Yeah, like, and I think that's something that, like, I didn't realize that it was something that that I was doing, because I was always told I was self-aware. It was like, why would, like, who's this therapist to tell me that I'm not? So I was always like, I always thought that I was someone that really knew their emotions. But then when it came to even doing the assessment for my autism, they were like, describe this emotion. And I'm like, okay, how do I describe that? And I really struggled to put the words together with the emotions that I was feeling. So that's when that kind of led into further investigation, learning more about and coming further to my diagnosis of being autistic, and having to kind of relearn emotions and identifying it.
That's a really one, I think, a very brave thing to do, and to have that awareness to come back around and go, now I have to relearn these emotions. And once you were diagnosed, did you keep it to yourself, or did you feel confident to share with like a select group of people or in your work environment? Was that something you kept to yourself?
I think the first time when I was diagnosed, I think I was still in a state of shock, because I didn't tell anybody for a few months. Not even my family. Like, I kept it to myself because I was given a report expecting to just be told that you're dyslexic, because that's what I was expecting. I had never heard of ADHD and I'd never heard of dyspraxia when they gave me the diagnosis. So I was just kind of left there like, okay. And in an educational diagnosis report, they give a very extensive review of your diagnoses. So they also say things like, oh, you are your IQ is quite low, or you probably won't do well in university, things like that. So it really does have like a damper on your confidence.
Yeah,
well. So I just kind of felt like I failed.
Not exactly a cheerleading squad, is that?
Yeah.
After a while, I got to a point where I realized that I've gone so many years undiagnosed, and realizing just how much support I needed for me to navigate, realizing that not everyone was able to read a book and forget what they read and not be able to say what they read. And I always struggled with that. Like I used to read so many books growing up, from Jacqueline Wilson to Lord knows what, Roald Dahl, everything. If you were to tell me what was that book about at the end of the book, I couldn't tell you. Like I didn't know how to explain the book, and I couldn't retain the information. But I got to a point where I was like, do you know what? I have to be my full self. And if someone is uncomfortable with the fact that I need additional support and I need more understanding, and you would need to extend patience with me, then I know that this isn't the place for me to exist and for me to flourish as a technologist. And I need to be in an environment where the culture supports my disabilities and supports my neurodivergent identity. That's how I've been able to have the career that I have. But if I'm in an environment that isn't allowing me to flourish and wants me to almost kind of dim my light, for example, to make it less uncomfortable, I'm really not trying to be in therapy again. And I'm really trying to be the best I can for myself, but also to inspire other people, not just in the tech space, but also as I transition into the AI machine learning space as well. And just in the area of advocacy. I can't advocate and hide my light. I can't advocate and not be myself. And I think Rosemary would agree with that too.
I do. And it's not, I see it a lot in women. Men have it as well. It's not just, it's not only a woman imposter syndrome.
Okay, we'll let them take some too. Okay.
It's more a character, personality thing as well. So, you know, I come from a Caribbean background, and my parents always said this, a pride comes before a fall. So, you know, make sure you're not showing off, make sure you're not boasting. So I grew up in that culture, but I was never really one to listen to what I was told to do.
I love that.
I'm very curious by nature. I'm very forthright. I'm very open. I'm quite loud, assertive, sometimes aggressive, if that's what you want to call it, because I speak my mind, I speak my truth. But when we're not being taught, we're not being helped to shine. We're not being, and if you've got that inherently in your personality, that you're a bit shy or introvert, or not introvert, but you're not good on self-promotion, then you're more likely to have that heaped on you as well, especially if you do speak up, because people say, oh, she's showing off, or but if it's true, it ain't bragging. So that's speaking the truth. It's fine. Thank you very much. I am very good at coding. I am very good at reading people. I am very good at, you know, insert your wonderful skill. Yes, I'll take it on the chin, but we just need to practice saying it more as well.
We do. I love that. We need to practice saying it more, and telling your truth to yourself, even just in a mirror, is so empowering. It's such a simple thing.
You're trying to boost yourself up for the day. If you say it in the mirror, or if you write it down, if it's in black and white, you're more likely to believe it. But if you just have things swirling around in your head and they don't come out, then you're more likely to believe them.
Is it a generational thing with speaking up? I feel like sometimes this younger generation might be doing a better job at speaking up about, hey, I'm neurodiverse. This is who I am. This is my authentic self, versus older generations. Are you guys seeing that through your coaching practice or through the people that you interact with, Jennifer?
I would say for sure. I think that when I first started talking about being neurodivergent, there wasn't very many people talking about it just yet, especially Black women and Black people as a whole. I think that within a lot of Black communities, whether it be in the US, UK, everywhere, there's still quite a bit of stigmas around it. Like it's just something that's supposed to just grow out of, or you're supposed to just work harder, and it's like you're asking me to have a literal fight against my brain. Like, I don't really know how you want me to win this.
Be someone
else, right?
I think I have managed to, I think from me being open is how I've been able to really see the conversation about neurodiversity in the tech industry being spoken about more, and a lot more organizations really trying to push to create an environment for neurodivergent people to be safe. However, I will still say that there's still a long way to go, but we've come a long way at the same time. because I think that there was a time, and I think from speaking to people that were diagnosed later on in life, even later than on in me, because I was diagnosed the first time with ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia, I was 27. And then I was diagnosed early this year at the age of 32 with autism. So it's like later on in life, but I've met people that have been diagnosed much later. And they say that back when they were younger, ADHD wasn't really a thing for them. And even if you had like a disability, it was something that you're supposed to keep to yourself. Yeah. And I find that even when it comes to job applications, for example, a lot of people don't disclose that they're neurodivergent to avoid being discriminated against. And I completely understand that. I've gotten to a point where I have some privilege where I have been advocating so much that I can't really hide that I'm neurodivergent. Like, Google me.
Yeah, I love that about you. You know what? But honestly, like, you are literally at the top of that brigade going in, right? Because you can't hide it now because you've become the advocate for it. And it's so pronounced over your brand. It is, in fact, inspiring. So I know if other people can see that, they can see themselves in you, either as a Black woman or someone that's neurodivergent, then you've literally touched one, if not two, not three, not four, not five, right? Because I think that sort of, somebody has to stand up first. It's like Rosemary said, somebody has to be the first person to stand up.
You've got to have a spokesperson, and the person that feels strong enough can help someone else feel strong enough.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
I like that because, but you've come so far, Jennifer, in what you've done. I don't see any of this slowing you down in all of your work that you've been doing in any way. So almost, I feel like it's your path in a way to be that seen and to say all of these truths out loud, because it is true that no matter how confident you are, if you hear so many times, you're too this, you're too direct, you're not this, you're not that, you tend to start questioning it, right? And so speaking up can cause problems, but it also makes you feel good to know that, like you said earlier, you represented your truth, and that's all we can do.
Absolutely. Because I think that one thing I would say is that for me, speaking about it, from the first time I spoke about it, and it wasn't even on a public stage, like I just brought it up at the first company that I worked for in the tech industry, and I was just asked the question, like, why am I the only Black woman here? And I didn't realize at the time that he was the CTO of the company and he came to visit. And I'm like, oh, well, sorry, I thought you're the manager. But, but why am I the only one here? It's a good question, though. But I think that from me talking about that, and also talking about being neurodivergent and speaking about it more and more, has literally given me more confidence in my identity as a neurodivergent.
Saying it out loud, like Rosemary said, say it out loud.
Exactly. As soon as Rosemary said that, I was like, that is exactly how it feels. Like when you're talking about it, it empowers you so much. And then you start to find people being like, I'm so inspired by that, or I want to start talking about it more. And it just brings the community to you just from talking about it.
Yeah, I think, by the way, that's a great name for a book. Why am I the only one here?
Yeah. Let me just trademark that.
I think you should write that right now and trademark it immediately on this podcast. What were you going to say? What were you going to say, Rosemary? Because you do a lot of mindset coaching, and I think this is what we're talking about right here is mindset coaching.
Well, it is. It's about getting your own headspace straight about what you want to say, who you are, and then you can speak it out. Sometimes you need help from someone else, a mentor, a coach, a guide, whatever, someone of that will help and guide you. But I'm listening to Jennifer O, and I'm just like, just listening to you, your certainty, and you're just comfortable in who you are, and you're not. People can try and thrust things on you. Like you said, people were saying you're so self-aware, and they probably didn't realize it, but can be meaning it in a disparaging way, or, you should be something differently. I don't know how else to be but myself,
Yeah.
Please don't make me feel bad about being who I am. And you're wearing that really well, and being an advocate for neurodivergent, it might be a heavy load for you to carry, but it might not be. The more you try it on, the more comfortable you'll be with it. As you've said, you're speaking it out loud. But I'm big on the mindset. I'm big on And before I was a coach, before I was trained, when I was younger, I was always, curious. I was always going against the things that I was taught to, or I was always curious. Why do I have to do it that way? Why can't I do it this way? I was always not breaking things, but not physical things, but breaking rules, breaking
the programming. I call it programming.
Yeah,
like this is how it.
Nice
Why?
girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was never built like that.
The thing that was interesting about what Jennifer said was like, they said, well, you're self-aware for a girl, and you were curious and going against the machine. Like, people were probably thinking, why is this girl asking so many questions? And I think the programming that we're taught is girls stay quiet and do this, and then boys are allowed to speak up. And I think there's a lot of data that talks about, gender and race and how people speak up in classes. And we won't get into that here, but that you're different because you are questioning the system, even as a girl or as a young child. Yeah. And how that part of you that you led you, I mean, was that a path that was always clear to you, knowing that you had these different thoughts and things? Or I also know that you were a comedian. Hello. We haven't touched on that any, but
yeah. I've got my bucket list of things to do in life.
stand-up comedian.
Stand-up comedian. I have been a stand-up comedian, indeed. I would love to do more of that, but it takes quite a lot of work as well. But
it does.
Yes. So going back to the as a youngster, so I had a difficult upbringing, and for another podcast. But yeah, aside from that, I remember I used to help people, even though I was going through my own difficulties. I used to help people. So I was always the voice of reason amongst friends, family, colleagues, even managers. I would offer some pearl of wisdom, even when I was, much younger.
Going through your own pain, yeah.
Going through my own pain. I've always been that way. So for me, I guess it was a path. I was here to do this somehow, I feel. And I'm I believe in being guided, which I kind of look for signs or, check in on things. But yeah, it's always something that I felt quite a passion for. But obviously I went down the route, my parents said, get a job, study, so I did all that stuff, and I just didn't feel quite fulfilled. But one of the reasons I do what I do is to actually help specifically women, because I obviously I can relate more to some of the stuff that we were all going through. But so for women who are in their roles, they're really good at their job, but somehow don't feel fulfilled or comfortable. So I help to explore with them whether that is they're in the right space or not. Is there something they can do to make sure they enjoy being in their role? And quite often I always think that if I had someone like me helping me through some of the tough times and challenges in my career, I might have stayed. I might not have felt the need to jump and retrain. But I want to help them who are in my situation, or in a situation similar to me, so that they can either stay, find their joy, find their voice, find their shine, or find something else.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than doing something because your parents told you to do it, or you're stuck in something because it doesn't feed who you are as a person. And I learned that a long time ago. Like, you definitely can't sit in that spot, even if it makes your parents happy. It's not, you can't stay in that spot. What would you like to see happen, both of you, with all of your experiences? What do you think is, I don't want to say what it's going to take to get there, because we could talk about AI and technology probably for a whole nother hour. But what is it that you would really like to see? I love asking this question because I think it's, again, say it out loud, speak the truth, and, maybe we can help make a plan to get there.
You want to go over to you, Jen?
Is that too broad?
No. I've got lots to say, but I just want to give.
Oh yeah,
I've got a lot to say.
I would love to see recruitment and just work culture get to a point where no one needs to hide anything. Like, we can really be truly openly authentic. From the beginning of when we're sending our job applications and sending our CVs, we can be authentic throughout, and also have that reciprocated. So, for example, if I am like where I was working, one of the companies I was working at before, they told me during the interview process, before I even started my first stage interview, they'd let me know I would be the only Black woman in the team. I wouldn't be the only woman of color, but I'd be the only Black woman in the team. Now, compared to where I was before, when I did not know that I would be the only Black woman in the organization, let alone the only Black person, because there was no one else that was Black but me, that a company that is comfortable enough to openly admit that they don't have the representation of me in a team before I even get to interview stage is better than someone that would keep it to themselves. And that also helped me to make a decision about whether that company is somewhere that I can flourish in. And that transparency is so needed for diversity, and it's very, very, very needed to retain talent in the tech industry, to bring talent in, but also to just create a culture where everyone is thriving and no one is hiding.
That definitely influenced your decision by just being that open.
Absolutely.
That's a culture. That's a culture that could help nurture and grow like other people. Yeah. That's great.
It's interesting you saying about, you can make that decision, because I think people forget that they should be interviewing the company they're working for as well.
So true.
I've heard this phrase a few times now as the assumption of powerlessness. And I just absolutely love that phrase. It's because we give away our power so often and we don't realize it by saying yes to things that we don't believe in, that don't stand with our values as well.
Oh my gosh, yes.
On a tangent again about what I want to see happen. But cultures in organizations. So I'm still seeing it. The misogyny, bullying, I'm still seeing it. I'm like, why? Lots of these companies need a culture audit. Like, seriously.
I love that culture audit.
Culture audit. Yeah. From everywhere. Yeah. From all aspects, from everywhere. If someone's coming in from the outside, if they're different, if they're diverse in some way, neurodiverse culture, backgrounds, upbringing, religion, whatever, education, if they are different, how comfortable are they going to feel in this organization? What's the pipeline for their career progression if they want to become a leader or a manager of people? What's the progression, right? Are you holding people back for different reasons? So the culture audit, that's a big thing. I think that should be that should be a company thing. Someone should build a company called, maybe I'll do that.
I think you should do that. I think you need to trademark this and go do this.
I will. I'm going to write that down.
I think you should put that down. Jennifer's got a book title now, or she's going to do something with that. And you've got this culture audit, which I think is way better than a lot of the consultants that come in to talk about creating culture, because they're still not talking about the elephant in the room. And that is misogyny, bullying. You're threatened. You feel unsafe because of your color or of your mind and the way it functions, or because of your gender. Like, that's still happening. So what does a real culture audit look like? I mean, you could stump this all over the place, Rosemary. You could do speeches. It's actually a really good idea.
It's good to talk.
It's always good to talk. It's always good to talk.
It's an interesting thing, because it's like, when you mentioned that as well, a lot of these companies would also say that despite the fact that women would or marginalized groups would leave the organization and, not return to tech industry or not feel welcome or experience bullying, these same companies will sometimes turn around and say, oh, diversity doesn't work. And it's like, it can work. It's just that you're just not good at doing it. And I think
exactly
you need to correct that.
I mean, I would love to call those people out. This is diversity just can't work, because they are the problem. You got to fight extra hard, but it shouldn't, as Rosemary said, why is this still happening?
Yeah. Dark ages. It's like the dark ages still there, kicking and screaming into 2023, 2024 nearly.
I believe that we're still stuck in this same loop around diversity, equality, and inclusion.
It's fear as well. At the heart of every problem, challenge you find in the world, at the heart of it is fear. Fear of something else, someone else.
Yeah, it's so well put. And fear is a horrible coach.
It is.
Fear is fear of everything. Definitely, fear was definitely that thing that held me back in some ways. And I think that I have to constantly unlearn fear as well. Like, having to constantly remind myself not to be fearful. And I think also just like talking over yourself, like just like Rosemary said, in terms of like just speaking to yourself and saying it out loud, especially with the a neurodivergent brain sounds like a really busy coffee shop, like it really does. But like we really just want to listen to that one little lovely voice behind the counter. We really want to listen to that voice, and that's what we need to hear and try and focus on. And I think that when we allow ourselves to listen to that and speak that over ourselves, and it's not just something that you just say one time and you just, you know, it just works. And it might work for some people, but I think for me, it's something that I have to continually practice, especially in the space of advocacy, when someone can say the wrong thing on social media, someone can say the wrong thing when you're given a talk, and that could literally just put you off wanting to speak again. But I think that having to kind of not allowing that to stop me from making change for other people's as best as I can really does change how you approach trying to make a difference for others.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel it in both of you. You feel it in the way you're talking. And I think the way that you have the word I would use is like how you've plowed through, you know, to just keep, and it is all about reminding yourself and believing in yourself to push yourself forward. Is there anything you want to leave this audience with? Because I know as a lot of people are excited about this, as I am as excited. There's so many words of wisdom, but is there one thing you just want to like remind everybody about before we go?
Well, Rosemary, go
if
first.
Not, that's okay.
If you want to.
So many things.
And you don't have to. The question was, is there anything you want to just leave in the people's minds in the very forefront? Is there any like sweet nugget you just want to take away, of like a hand to a fist or something?
So just to finish on what you were saying, Jen, about reminding yourself. So I'm actually, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I'm actually a big fan of writing things, post-it notes, reminders of who you are, how great you are, how wonderful you are. So you see it, you know, you're brushing your teeth, put it on your bathroom mirror, whatever.
Yes,
on the fridge, on your phone, you know, you are amazing, girl. You know,
I love those. I put them on little postcards and little index cards and sit them around places.
Put I don't know if you can send an email to yourself, you know, with a delayed send.
Ooh,
you know,
that's a good idea.
3 weeks time, like, dear Jen, dear both of you, Jen, dear Jen.
Jen squared.
I haven't told you this lately, but you know, you are absolutely incredible. You know, write it from the truth. You know, if you forget,
I love that.
Someone else to help you. So I know that's slightly off the tech subject.
It's not off at all. It's not off at all, because first and foremost, we're humans before we're technologists, before we're anything else. And I think that's the thing we're forgetting. Jennifer's new company is Data, but Make It Human. Is literally back to the fact that we are humans.
Fantastic. Bring the human, and that's what I'm all about. Bring the human into your work, bring the human into yourself. You've got the technical skills already, but don't forget to have the human side of things. And I love that.
There you go. I love it too. It's really beautiful. And so anything from you other than making it human?
I think that's a good one.
It's hard. That's a hard question.
I think for me, one thing I would encourage people to truly believe in themselves and be unapologetic about who you are fully, no matter your identity. And in a world where we're constantly being taught to mold ourselves or to hide parts of ourselves or to keep things to ourselves, I think that in a world where we can really fully be ourselves and really create I think also just in the workplace as well, creating culture and a tech environment, a working environment where it's not a taboo to be queer in tech, to be a Black woman in tech, to be neurodivergent. It's just something like, okay, so what do you need? I think that and I think that I know it's difficult, because I know that for some people, there's still a journey they have to go through on their own in order to embrace that for themselves. But I encourage you to do that. And just like Rosemary said, in terms of find your joy, find your shine. And I think that you should absolutely do that. And if tech is the industry that you feel that you can really bring something into, go ahead and do it. And if you find that there isn't a space for you in terms of what you're envisioning, create it for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to say, go bake it, make that space, because you have done that. And I think Rosemary has done that as well. It's just making your space. Well, I really appreciate the time that you guys have given, and we're going to put so much stuff in the notes. There's so many great little phrases and inspirational things that have come out of here. So I'm going to put all that in the notes, and everybody listening to this podcast will be able to connect with Jennifer. They'll be able to connect with Rosemary. You can subscribe to Jennifer's blog. It's theopalblog.com. You can also book Rosemary for coaching sessions to discover you. I love that, by the way. To discover you. Both Rosemary and Jennifer speak around the world at special events. They do workshops, trainings, and they're just an inspiration. So I hope everybody goes and checks out all the links on the notes page. And on that note, ladies, since it's late in the UK, I will bid you farewell. And thank you for joining Tiny Little Victories.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you all for listening to this podcast on authenticity and diversity with Rosemary Wilson and Jennifer Opal. There are so many great things that they said that I will put in the notes of this podcast. So please be sure to read that. I will put in all the links where you can connect with them. You can be inspired by the things that they do. I know I am. And on that note, I would like to say how inspired I am by you, all of our listeners. Spotify does an end of the year weekly podcast wrap, and I was reading it today before this episode and was truly blown away by, number one, how much sharing you guys have done with Tiny Little Victories. First of all, let's go fans. That's all I got to say. We have so many new fans, and most of them came in 2023. I absolutely love that. And we are now streaming in 23 countries. And the top 5 countries that you all are listening to this from is the US, the Netherlands, whoop, UK, rah, Germany, yes, and New Zealand, go Kiwis. And oh my God, just to come back to the sharings for a minute, like, you guys have been serious sharers, and I can see it in all the data. 82% of you are sharing with your friends or your enemies, about 82%, just by sending the direct link to Tiny Little Victory. So I just want to say thank you very much. And also, the most shared episode was Fighting the Good Fight with my cousin Shannon Kite-Powell, who, by the way, is getting ready to do a new one because she's graduating from law school this month. And the number one most streamed episode is the pilot with Naos Wilbrink. So go ahead to the website at www.tinylittlevictoriespodcast.com and check out all the episodes. You can see everybody's gorgeous little faces and see which episode you'd like to listen to again. And on that note, I shall bid you adieu until next time on Tiny Little Victory.